Hi, welcome to another episode of today's Unexpected Podcast. As always, we have myself, currently in the Netherlands, Matt, who I believe is in Boston, Evan, who is in, I believe, Ireland, and Alisher, who is in Pennsylvania, his mom's basement. So, just joking. So on today's episode,
What you
uh,
don't know is you've actually like really cut him to the quick because he is in his mom's basement.
Yeah, right.
plot twist.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Renier. What a great introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Alisher and I close used to be close. Now we're enemies. Okay, for today's episode, guys, we are going to be talking about our top three most unlikely happenings at a tournament or a game, just basically in the game, things that we find unlucky, stories about the dice gods, basically. Uh, we will not be reviewing a list today, but yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's get into it. So,
Oh, by the way, send in lists. One of the
yes.
reasons we're not reviewing them is because people haven't sent in any recently. Because I know we had a long spate where we stopped reviewing lists, but send them in. We're having time again to review lists, and we can still get to them. So
True, true. And then also today marks also a special part of our podcast. It is the 120th episode, which is quite a feat, I guess. We're known for quantity, hopefully quality as well. All right, so let's go
quantity
into
has a quality all its own.
that is true. That is true. As some people
That's what we keep trying to tell ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go into our top three most unlikely happenings, and when the dice gods were either with us or not with us. So who would like to go first? I'll go down the list actually from my screen. Let's do Evan.
That just had that reminded me of high school where like the teacher was like, "Oh, and who wants to volunteer to present first?" And literally nobody raised their hand.
Yeah. And we're all on video, so we can't do the thing where like everybody but one person like takes a step backwards, leaving one person to a functionally taking a
Yeah.
step forward.
Zero eye
And and,
contact.
and no, nobody meets the eyes of the teacher. They're all just like looking off somewhere else.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'll start mine off. With I'm gonna go with my most or one of my most recent moments, which is I get to Battle of Unnumbered Tears, which for those of you who don't know is a tournament uh in the Nottingham area in the UK. So this was my first, like, other than Articon, my first real UK overseas tournament. Um, and I go in first round. It's 1,000 points. I've got a 40 model army with Gwahir, Galadriel, Elendil, the works. Um, and then I'm playing up against a guy with Dane, Thorin, um, Biffer, and Iron Hills Ballista. And he's got, I think it was like 47, 48 Iron Hills warriors. So it's a big Iron Hills army. Thankfully, though, I go in, I'm like, I should have a pretty decent shot at this. Elendil is very strong. I've got enough models to deal with him, even though I'm slightly under his model count. Uh, I've got blinding light, so I bubble up all my guys in the blinding light. And I know that even if a ballista hits, it's not going to do that much damage. It's only a strength 4 hit. So I push my guys forward. Turn one, he rolls the 6 to hit. He rolls the 6 on the scatter. I'm like, okay, that's not too much of a problem. On average, he should kill like 2 or 3 models with the strength 4 hits because he needs fives. He kills, I believe it was 9 models with
Oh
that
my.
ballista shot, which, for those who are keeping track of model counts, took my 40 models to his 48 models down to roughly 30 models to his 48 models. And this is the first round, the first turn of this UK tournament, and I was just like, "Oh my God,
Wait, didn't you
is
get
my
second
run
place?
going to end round one?" Um, and and then actually, I don't want to take too long saying this first one, but I then decided I'll just go for a Hail Mary, and then I compelled an Iron Hills warrior, charged not Galadriel, charged Elendil and Gwahir into him, heroic combated straight into Dane, and just went, screw it, I'm gonna go for this 50-50 roll off on the strike off. And I won and killed Dane. And that was like my Hail Mary. If I had not gotten that off, I wouldn't have been able to win the game. But I guess that game is a good example of number one, siege weapons suck and should never exist and should all be banned. But also that even if something ludicrous like that happens round one, go for something ludicrous yourself and you might be able to get back in the game.
I like that you say that actually, Evan, because that is literally my strategy every single game. For some reason, it works most of the time. Okay, guys. So obviously so that's that. That is Evan's first most unlikely happening. Let's go down to Matt. I think you're next on my screen.
My next. Okay, so I think I'm going to tell the bedtime story of Aragorn the Cowardly Lion, who I went to a tournament called Paths of the Dead recently. It's a local tournament, and Alisher and Devin came up for it. We had a good time there, but I was playing I decided to pull out some models that I hadn't played a lot. So I was going to take Gandalf on cart and a whole bunch of hobbits. So I had like Gandalf on cart. I had old Bilbo with the ring. I think I had Lotho in there, and who else did I have? Oh, and I think I had Farm Maggot. And to round it out, so I would have like some killing power in this list. I had Aragorn on horse, and Aragorn was doing great. He actually he did fine throughout the tournament, except when he was called on to exercise his will. And it started in Alisher's game when Alisher was playing Thranduil's Hall. So we had Thranduil with the Circlet of Kings, who pops off, of course, the Aura of Dismay at some point early in the game, and then charges in and gets Thranduil to exactly the right position, also overlapping Aragorn, who's on horse, and it saved all three of his will for precisely this occasion. Pops off his I think he was on full stats, so I think he was like 3 will and 3 might at this point. Pops off the Nature's Wrath on the auto 6, and Aragorn, having nothing else to do with his will, he thinks, throws all 3 will into resisting, and I think rolls a 2 high. So, well, that blows kills a whole bunch of hobbits, or it doesn't kill, but it knocks them over, and they're promptly killed by elves, and then and knocks Aragorn off of his horse. And then the next couple of turns, I proceed to win the heroic roll move offs and like try and get Aragorn like up off the ground into opponents, and proceed to I think I rolled like a 2 followed by a 3 on Aragorn's courage tests or something to that effect.
It had to be like a 2 and a 1 because he's courage 6.
Well, I mean, I couldn't roll a 1 on 2 dice. But I had no will left.
2 and a 1. 2 and a 1.
Yeah. Well,
like
I mean,
3 high. It was really
I rolled a 2 on 1 test, and I rolled a 3 on a second test.
Oh yeah.
2 times when he failed to charge right in a row. So he just cowered there. And the really annoying part was this apparently like struck him to his core. So not only was he impotent in this game, but there were 2 other courage tests in like the next game when I was fighting the Witch King and I was trying to charge him, and I rolled a 3 and then another 3 on a later turn. I think Aragorn made a total of, I think, 6 courage tests during this entire tournament, and 4 of them were, 3s or 2s. So Aragorn, he's in therapy now. We have we have high hopes. He's really, he's working through some issues, but we're hoping to equip him with some mechanisms that he can kind of build his confidence up. I've gone in there a couple times, and he's been standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm good, I'm strong, I'm a mighty hero. I'm good, I'm strong, I'm a mighty hero. And I don't know, these affirmations have never really seemed effective for me, but hopefully they'll work for him, and hopefully he'll be able to actually charge something that causes terror in the future, but we'll have to see.
I mean, Dad, this whole circumstance seems very similar to back at Weathertop in the movies when Aragorn was fighting against the Ringwraiths, because I remember distinctly that he spent the entire time transfixed and not charging in against the Ringwraiths and failing his courage tests. So clearly this is an accurate movie depiction.
Yep. But like I said, we have high hopes for him, and we're all trying to be really supportive of Aragorn. So, if you're listening to this, maybe just send him like a Facebook message or a text and say that you're thinking of him and you're kind of with him in spirit, because as we all know, those types of messages really have an effect on people. Spoiler alert: no, they don't.
All right, so Aragorn not performing as he should from Matt, and then we're gonna go down to Alisher. What's one of yours?
Rainier, you can tell you're a teacher, like the way you're like, all right, now we're gonna go to Sally Joan.
Sally Joan,
You're like going down the list. I'll let you honest each one at a time. I guess Aragorn's just getting a bad rap today. My first story that I have is this was like 2019 Nova. This is like right around the time that, well, the new edition, this was like the first Nova since the new edition dropped. I don't know, for whatever reason in Philly, like everyone was taking big heroes. So I'm like, I'm going to take Aragorn, King Alisar to Nova. This is going to be great. I didn't have Lady of Light, so it was just, so no magic protection. I'm like, who needs it? So then I'm doing like, all right, I think this was round 5. I play against Matt, and Matt has this army that nobody's playing called Angmar that just like pops up. And I'm like, and so like I have my Aragorn. Aragorn's like all excited. He's like gonna get in. Matt does a compel on Aragorn. I just throw 1 dice at it. I roll like a 2. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna. I think he rolled a 5 or 6. I'm like, I'm not gonna spend all my might to do this. So he compels him. I'm like, oh, whatever. Nothing's going to happen to him in 1 turn, right?
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong in 1 turn? I mean, he's sitting there. He's fine. And then this bat comes like, woo, over my lines and is like now charging Aragorn. So I'm like, oh, no, like this is not good. But I'm like, he needs 4s to wound me. Like, I'm not, maybe I win the fight on luck. Maybe something goes right. Like, he needs 4s. I have all my fate. I have all my might. This is fine. So then Matt, of course, wins the fight. And I think you did 3 wounds and then you mighted up to a 4th. I recall you kind of being back and forth on this might up. And I'm like, all right, now I have to pass all my fate, but it's a good thing I have all my might. I didn't spend it on that resist roll. Throw it down 3 1s. Aragorn is just dead on the table now. And then this is
Jorah just bites Aragorn's head off.
Yeah, this is turn 2 of the game. And I just kind of look at the table and I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? This is an 800-point event. 240 points are just dead off the table. Aragorn had this one defining moment where he could have made his last stand, and then nope, 3 1s. Apparently, Aragorn's trustworthy until he has to test for anything, and then all of a sudden, all of the heroism in him just completely disappears. He doesn't come up to it. But my Aragorn, he didn't even get an opportunity to go to therapy. He was done after that. He was retired, never to see the table again. But that was one of my early of the new edition memories, which is something going horrifically wrong.
Nice, nice. I think I remember that actually.
Yeah.
You looked so
Probably,
sad.
So,
you probably walked over to your table like all depressed and despondent.
The whole Philly crew was like, "What happened, Alisher? What happened?" You were like, "Matt's bad." Like, oh, okay.
so
Matt's a
so
good
I
player.
remember that the look of like complete and utter dejection on Alisher's face, like as that game was going on. Because I think Gullivar went on to eat like all of your heroes in a
You
sequence of
did
tracks.
everything. And then I remember, like, I don't know if the game was even done, but you looked at me and you're like, I'm gonna go get some water. Would you like some water?
Right
I'm
after.
like, I guess, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just it was just this look of just like,
Like, what am I supposed to do now?
and I eventually I went to Rainier and I said, is Alisher okay? And Rainier's like, oh no, he's always like that.
He's always like, yeah. What was
That's
funny
his
is
old
like
man.
before the game even started, someone right next to me looked over and they're like, "Are you okay? Like you look depressed." And I'm like, "No, the game hasn't even started. I'm having a great time." I was
Yeah, we coached Alisher on how to play the game and how to look nice when he plays. All right. Well, that's a good example. So I guess I will go into mine. Mine actually comes from a recent game at Articon when I played the French team captain. You guys probably heard this story. But basically what's that scenario where you have to go, it's like capture the flag?
retrieval.
Retrieval, excuse me. That's my ignorance going into this game. I have never played it before because of course I took like 3.5 years off when I lived abroad. So I go into this game, he's playing the Bears, and I'm like, okay, Mr. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it is my intention. You cannot charge me, right? He's like, yeah, of course, I cannot charge you on the first turn. I'm like, no, you can't. Okay, so what I'm putting here, so far, even when you morph into the bear, you cannot charge me. Of course, I cannot charge you. First game, it's his turn. Bear, I charge you. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, no. I was like, no, no, no. Like, what do you mean? He was like, you're half an inch away. Like, I'm like, what? He's like, it's Aragorn. This is competitive. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So right off the bat, I'm like in a bad mood. I'm like, dang, he's just gonna tear through my people. But then I remember from one of Matt and Alisher's games, the bear has to charge after he charges. So the big boy. So I basically throw some cab to the left. I was playing Umbar and Harad. He has to charge it, and I remind him that I'm like, oh, you have to charge it. He's like, oh, I forgot my rules. I'm like, oh yeah, of course you did. But he's a nice guy. Everything's going good. He's
By
tearing.
the way, if you are a French and competitive player, I am sure you are very, very lovely. And this is
No,
not
no, I
this
totally
is
love
not
this. This
dissing
recruit
any
was so
French
kind and
player.
stuff. This showed my ignorance going in the game. I was like, I have no idea what happens. That's what makes this game so unlikely because as he's going through the thing, I literally have one Arbalister on the retrieval, shielding for 5 turns in a row, just winning the fight against the young bear, Beorn's son. And it's just, he just kept rolling twos and ones, twos and ones. So unlikely. But I was even ignorant in the game too. When I retrieved it, and dumb old me, I had no idea the rules. So I just retrieved the thing and just kept running to the opposite board end because I thought I'm gonna run my guy off and get all the points because I mixed with a reconnoiter. And he says nothing the whole game. In his head, he's like, this guy is so stupid. So I run it off the board and I'm like, I go off the board and he's like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, please help me. So then I have to bring my guy all the way back. Meanwhile, the Arbalister shielding this whole time bear, just shielding and shielding. He's rolling one and twos, one and twos. He even had like 3 might on the bear too, but he couldn't win, poor guy. Okay, but the game basically ends with me winning because yeah, in shields we trust. I just kept shielding that guy off. So it was so unlikely. I feel so bad for him because the French team was so competitive. They were all really sweet, but just the dice rolls stunk for him and it was just a horrible thing. But yeah, that's my unlikely game. All right, let's go down to Evan.
All right. Well, speaking of being extremely sad and depressed after a Matthew Iverson does something ridiculous to you, I have a story. This is not a tournament game, but it is interesting nonetheless because I had decided that I was going to play an army that I had never played before, which is Moria. I've basically never played Moria in my life. I don't understand how it works, and I'm fairly sure every game I've played with Moria, I've lost. And just as a spoiler, this is one of them. Um, so he was playing a very, very non-serious Khazad-dûm dwarf list. And I think this was it 650 or 8? It was something like that. Where you had, I think it was a King's Champion, maybe Ballin and Flowy, um, and a but the main thing you had was one of those 60-point garbage dwarf ballistas that, and I know people are hearing this and they're like, is Evan going to tell a story that doesn't involve a dwarf ballista? The answer is maybe.
It's just the dwarf list is
You're just
traumatized. We'll have a talk afterwards.
But the thing I was excited most about this Moria army was because I got to use Drew's Hag, right? And I had specifically taken the army. It wasn't too competitive, but I had loaded up with a bunch of beasts, and I was like, all right, my time has come. I'm going to enrage these beasts, and they're going to chew right through these dwarves, and I'm going to win this game. Round one, I know people are sensing a theme here. Round one, Dad shoots with his dwarf ballista. I think you had 3 in the ways for Drew's Hag. He hits with the ballista.
It
He
was,
rolls
it was
the
like
6
two
on the
guys in a
scatter.
column. Yeah.
Yeah, he rolls the 6 on the scatter. He passes the first in the way for the column. He passes the next 2 guys, and he hits Drew's Hag, which is like, okay, well, I'll probably take a wound, have to burn my fate. He does the wound, I double 1 my fate rolls. So my shiny 90-point model got removed on the first turn by a 60-point dwarf ballista that I'm fairly sure you just threw in because you didn't know what to do with the remaining points in your army.
That
And it
ballista was
just
the key to my army. And I mean, this was clearly one of these like Wile E. Coyote moments where, you know, Ashrak's kind of walking up there and like one of his buddies is standing next to him and going, what's that circular shadow? Why on top of you? Why is it getting bigger? And Ashrak's like, what? You know, and then it was over.
The worst part is it doesn't even have volley fire. So it's just like the ballista bolt just like it went up to the front 2 goblins, just like moved sideways and like weaved through them and then just hit him and killed him. It was like a heat-seeking missile that just
what you don't know is those dwarves had like elevated this ballista to like 60 degrees and just lobbed it right up and over all the intervening things.
And then after that, I'm fairly sure you just went, okay, sure, castle in the corner. And I ran up to you, and I think I killed a grand total of 2 or 3 dwarves in that game as you just walked through my Moria army. Because I couldn't crack the armor anymore because I didn't have my enraged beast.
There you go. Every time I send Rainier a Khazad-dûm or Moria dwarf list, he's like, where's the ballista? Where's the ballista? Clearly, there's good cause now for the ballista.
It's true. It's true.
MVP of
The 1 game out of 46.
Yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I never played Moria again, ever.
We'll get to later why Evan never played Saruman again later, which is a similar story.
Oh no, don't say that story.
But before we do that, I'm gonna continue our bear theme, and this was a doubles game at Articon that Alisher and I were playing together, and we have the Dragon Emperor Legion, so we have Dragon Emperor Rutabi and Borgir, and we're playing against the double bears. I think, boy, I feel like I ran into this army like 2 or 3 times at Articon, but it's the 2 bears and it's the 12 guys at 650 points. And all right, so this was 700 points. So I think there may have been more guys because it was doubles. So we're not entirely sure what we're going to do about these 2 bears. I can't even remember what the scenario was, but it was not an objective based scenario. It was a scenario where like we had to like kill at least
one. It was like the Contest of Champions one. The worst.
It wasn't Contest of Champions because we were doing it a pro smart. It might have been It wasn't to the death. It might have been Lords of Battle, actually.
Oh yeah,
Something
maybe it
like
was
that.
towards that one.
And we're a little puzzled about how we were gonna, pull this one off. And so we were doing the approach march, because we started out kind of a fair distance away and we're coming together. And we're like, Bjorn has to charge. Let's give him something to think about. So at the end, we moved second in one of these approach march turns, and we ended up putting somebody near the front of our army within 8 inches of Bjorn, who was kind of like leading the charge, and there were a bunch of guys behind him. We lose priority on the next turn, so that the bears had to go first, and they go and they kind of move their guys, and they decide they're not going to come out. So they move kind of like all their guys around and kind of stay out of range, and they're going to take a bunch of shots with their strength 4 bows. And they move Grim Bjorn, to try and do a flanking maneuver. And they move their whole army, and it's like just Bjorn left. And they're like, we're just going to move Bjorn here. And we're like, Bjorn actually has to charge. And these two guys, these are two great guys from the Netherlands, had not played the Bears before, had forgotten about that rule. And they're like, well, I guess we're sending in the bear. So the bear goes charging into like the center of our line, and we're moving second. So, and Fury's up. So basically the entire Easterling army surrounds Bjorn. And we're like, he could still pull this off if he strikes and he wins up, but we've got an elven blade in there, because the Emperor was in, Ratabi was in, and then a whole bunch of pikemen were in, and then like every other pikeman we could have was like standing behind somebody else. So if you imagine there's Bjorn in the center of this like 3 deep like porcupine of guys with pikes. And so it's all going to come down to these roll-offs, and we called heroic strikes with both Rutabi and the Emperor, because we wanted to make sure we got it. And of course we roll like a 2 and a 3. So we're at fight 9, and the bear, who also struck, gets up to fight 10. And we're like, oh crap, this could go south in a hurry. So we roll all our dice. Of course, we get a 6 in there somewhere, and Bjorn goes to roll his dice and rolls his 4 dice and gets it 2 highest. So he can't make the 6. So not being daunted by our failure to get a strike up, to get at least a 4 on a strike up roll, he does us one better and gets to the point where the highest he can get is a 5. And Grim Bjorn, even with all of his bonuses and everything, there were enough. I think the Emperor was also Blade Wrath going in there. There was enough damage to take out Bjorn in one turn. So that was definitely a classic example of I will see your bad luck, and I will raise you one more. All right, you're up, Alisher. Unless I just stole your story.
No, you didn't steal my story. All right, so my next story, I had Rainier and I, this had to have been maybe this was still 2019, end of 2019. We went to Tennessee for a tournament.
I got a story.
I had a Moria list that I've played a lot since, but it was like the first time I had taken it. Durbers was my general, and then like I had a Cave Drake, 2 of the Tremor Shamans, regular Shaman, and then like the Spider Queen allied in. And the last round of the tournament was Contest of Champions. And of course, I'm playing against Azog and Bolg for Contest of Champions. I'm like, well, this is going to go really south really quickly. But still, so I'm like, if everything goes right, like I have my Tremor Shamans, I have like Shatter, I have all of this stuff. So then I'm like going through the paces. And I think the first thing that I do is I use 1 will from the regular Shaman to transfix Azog to try to burn some resources if I can. I get a 6. So he's like, oh, okay, well, I need to resist it with at least 1. So he rolls it. I don't remember what it was. It was like a 5. He boosts it up to a 6. And then I go, I think first I tried Tremor. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can get a Tremor. So Azog has used 1 of his will points, a my point, and then has 3 more will because of the warg. So then I tremor Azog. Azog, I think he uses 2 will points, rolls like a 1 high. He's just like double ones. So then he's tremored. So then he's off the warg. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like Durbers is like sitting in a corner, like plotting, like, oh, maybe I can charge this turn. So then I have the other one. The other one goes to shatter his first weapon, because I think Azog has 2 weapons. Shatters it, goes off. I don't remember what he rolls. He fails the resist roll. And just the rest of the game pretty much was like, what can these 2 little like tremor shamans do to poor Azog? Azog was just getting the ring around, really. Everything was broken by the end of the game. Durbers is going around like just killing like little orcs right and left. And in the end, I don't remember what it was, but I think somehow it had to have been like the ugliest 12-0 I have ever seen in my entire life. Because here's little Durbers running around doing his best, and Azog is just trying to fight off these goblins right and left and has no ability to do so. So that was probably one of those times where, you know, you look at this table, you're like, if everything goes well, and everything goes perfectly. And Durbers, and it is not the first time that Durbers has won Contest of Champions for me. So he's just, you know, just like Aragorn is cursed in that he cannot win or he cannot pass any like resist roll of any kind. Durbers is blessed in that it doesn't matter what he plays against, he's winning Contest of Champions one way or another.
Yeah, well, everything went well for Alisher in that game in Nashville. Now I'm going to tell you everything that went wrong for me in Nashville.
I absorbed all of your good luck.
He did. He just absorbed it. Yeah. So same tournament that I went to with Alisher in 2019. Yeah, I think you're right. It was 2019. Their grand tournament. So it was five games. We were doing pretty well at it. I was at 4 majors, and I think I went on top table for the last round, and it was Contest of Champions, which is my least favorite scenario ever, just because things happen way too fast. So I'm going up against a Shade, who's a Shade Witch King with Crown on Fell Beast and Golivar. And here I'm with like Mahud, which was pretty fun my first time playing them. But basically what happened was he played it pretty well, besides he threw Golivar in the back ranks where all of my camels were. Now I was thinking, okay, 4 wounds, low defense. I can charge one Mahud king into it. I think I had 3 kings. Charge 1 king, he can get into it, and it happen. First Mahud king rolls double ones on the courage test. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think I had called a move with him. So let me think. I don't know if he could or could not get in, but the next Mahud double one to charge in as well. So right off the bat, I'm like spending all these resources just to get a freaking Mahud in so I can get my camels in. Then I surround him with my camels, which are with the leader, with the 2 Mahud kings, I would say maybe four-ish. So you have 6 strength 4 hits, 3 high on each one of them. So I do not wound him on that. I win the fight, completely have him surrounded, and strike up. He heroic defenses, which was really smart, but I strike up with both of them. Both of them don't strike up high enough. So it's like, oh shoot, this whole thing's just going bad. For some luck, I win the fight actually because he rolls low. And then I have him surrounded. I'm like, okay, boom. I'm just gonna kill him. All I need to roll is like maybe I think I wounded him once or twice or on the charge when I was hoping I would kill him. So all I need is rolls 2 6s, and I have like 13 or 14 die, 0 6s. And then just everything goes bad, of course. His Witch King kills my Soladan on horse, who actually dies by breaking his neck on his Throne Rider. So it's just, the whole game went poorly. Mahud did not show up that game. And yeah, it's what, 4 years ago. I'm still bitter.
Can't tell.
That's the reason I went to Korea, actually.
It's true. You did move right after that. You're like, I can never return to this game.
I cannot.
I cannot show my face in an SVG tournament again.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Self-imposed exile.
Yeah, exactly. It was my home state too. So Alisher and I were like, yeah, I'm gonna go get my home state. But yeah, that guy destroyed me. How about you, Evan? What's your second one?
Right. So this game, it was actually also at Battle of Unnumbered Tears. So there's a lot of highlights for me at Battle of Unnumbered Tears, but I'm sure everyone will be happy to know that this is not a ballista focused situation this time. But yet again, for the third time, it is against dwarves. So this was my game against Alistair King. Um, and it was what's the objective one where there's one objective in the middle, two on either side, and then you start in different corners.
Oh,
So
divide and
like one
conquer.
half of your army starts there. Yeah, divide and conquer. Um,
Honestly, everyone's like, how do these Americans win anything when they have no idea what they're even talking about?
It's an excellent
it
question.
was one of those. I mean,
Someday we'll
basically all I
explore that
knew
on
was
the
to go to
podcast.
the center.
Like they got sent
So
Antarctica in any scenario.
yeah, so we had a very intense game. He had his Khazad-dûm Vault Warden shield wall, which I was finding almost impossible to kill with any of my guys except for Elendil. Basically Elendil was doing all of the work for me. He was keeping me in the game. Um, but so the way it was towards the end of the game was both of us were in range of the central objective. We had a decent number of guys in range. He had one objective on his side very firmly in his control, and I had one objective on my side very firmly in my control, or so I thought, because one sneaky ranger of his, Gwahir, was on a building. One sneaky ranger was able to get up on top of the building and threaten Gwahir. I won the heroic move off, and I'm like, okay, Gwahir doesn't really have any good place to land, so he'll charge into the guy, barge him off of the building, and then fly over and do something. Gwahir rolls, triple ones. Guy wins the fight, beats him. Okay, that's fine. Next turn, I charge in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get him this time. I win the fight, which is great. I barge him. He takes, I think it was 4 strength 3 hits, survives. So he's on the ground. And then the next turn, the ranger stands up and he's like, ooh, this objective is 2 turns away for me. So the ranger moves up in range of the objective. I have a sentinel on the objective to try and defend it. I'm like, okay, this should be fine. I've got a sentinel there. So I grab him. He, of course, passes his courage test, which is fine. I take a shot at him. I miss. Next turn, I try to grab him again. He passes his courage test. He moves in range of the objective. And I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. I'm going to charge the sentinel in. I've got my 2 attacks at fight 5. He's got his 1 attack at fight 4. I wound him 55% of the time if I win the fight. I lose the fight, my sentinel dies, and he has the objective now. So on the last turn of the game, when it was extremely important for me to have as many guys as possible in range of the central objective, I had to send Gwahir all the way over to the side objective just to try and beat that one guy on the objectives, because otherwise, if I didn't do that, I would have lost. So at this point, I'm like, okay, this is not good because he's got more guys in range of the central objective, or he's going to after this round of combats. What I did not know was that apparently this tournament was diced down at some point, which is once time is called, it was either like it was like 5 minutes, I think, after time is called, dice go down. So in the middle of the combat phase, when we both did not expect time to be called, time was called, and we counted up the guys in range. I took off my models. I think it was 13 in range. We took off his, he had 11 in range. But he very correctly pointed out that the objective had gotten off-centered. So we moved the objective back to the center where it should be, and we measured dwarves. If he gets 2 in range, he draws the central objective and wins because of that one dwarf ranger on the side objective that I wasn't able to kill, but was able to outnumber on the objective. So he measures the first guy, he's in range, measures the second guy, 1 millimeter or less out of range of the central objective, and I win by 1 model in the center. And the worst part is we used his objectives, which were 25 millimeter. And I had suggested at the beginning of the game that we use my objectives, which are slightly more than 25 millimeters. So if we had used my
Oh,
objectives,
you
I
reverse
would have
psychologied
lost.
him. That was great.
And you
Oh,
Yeah,
reminded
it was
him at the end of the game.
it was all planned.
You suckered him in. I mean,
The
so
whole strategy.
that's a great psychological warfare trick where you're like, why don't we use the bigger objective markers? And Alistair's like, oh, wait a minute. You're suggesting bigger objective markers. So he wants that. So I should say smaller objective markers. So I'll go with the smaller objective markers. I foiled his plan when you had actually, yeah.
So that was a pattern of ludicrous bad luck immediately into ludicrous good luck, which ended up sealing me that game. I think it was like either 4-2 or 3-2 or something like that.
Yeah. So that was, I'm trying to think of the character's name from The Princess Bride. Starts with a V. Oh, Vicini. Yeah. You Vicini'd him. He was sitting there, trying to figure out do I go with the larger objective because he wants me to take the larger objective, or is he saying that he wants the larger objective because he really wants me to take the smaller objective? Yeah. Good job. All right. So, are we back to me?
Yeah, we're on you, Matt.
All right. So
this is the Saruman story.
Yeah, this is the Saruman. This is the Saruman story. This
Oh,
is
no.
Saruman. So we decided this is another game between Evan and I at our place. And Evan really wanted to try out Saruman, so he had his Saruman on horse. And was it Saruman the white, or was it Saruman
I think it was the good one.
The good one, yeah. So Saruman the White. So we wanted the re-rolling casting and all this stuff. And I really wanted to try out the Watcher in the Water. And we're playing this on an Isengard board that we have that, it has the giant tower in the middle, of course, and then it has the giant wall with the dam on it. And then it's got a whole bunch of scaffolding pieces. And it's also got 3 or 4 of these, like pits. And they're just, they're the pits with the walkways over them, and then there's just black on the inside. And the way we traditionally play these is, if you fall into one of these pits, you're dead because you fall a couple hundred feet and you die. We're playing through this game, and we play a couple turns, and Evan moves his Saruman next to one of these pits, and I still haven't brought the Watcher on, and I'm sitting there going, because this is like nowhere near any of the rest of my army, and I look at this and I go, is this worth it? And I just decide I have to do this. So of course I bring the Watcher on, and I bring the Watcher on so that he's like half overlapping Saruman, but otherwise kind of next to the pit. And the way this rule reads is, you have to move the figure the smallest amount possible to basically get out from under the Watcher. And there's something about, you alternate based on, first the guy with the Watcher picks, then somebody else picks. But it really didn't matter here because there was only one shorter way to move, because the rules are quite clear that if you have to get pushed back and fall, you have to get pushed back and fall. And poor full stat Saruman, on his horse, has a Watcher in the Water appear right underneath him and pushes him off the edge into the abyss, where he dies horribly. And I don't think I've ever seen you take Saruman after that, Evan.
I was so sad.
Yeah.
Well, I took him a lot in the old edition. I was like, this new Saruman looks pretty good because he's got the re-rolls and the horse. Because in the old edition, you had to choose between the re-rolls and taking the horse. So I wanted to try out the new Saruman, and then I think I got maybe I tried to cast one like sorceress blast on like a random goblin before he got plunged into the depths by the water, the watcher in
Yep.
the water. And
I think
yeah,
I
there
think
was
unfortunately, didn't you have like Glorfindel in that army too? And
I did.
yeah, and then basically everything charged in on the Watcher after that because the Watcher was essentially like all on his own. But somehow the Watcher like managed to survive at least long enough for the rest of the army
Yeah,
to come
I
up.
could not kill that thing.
Yeah. But yeah, poor Saruman, RSVP Saruman. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where there's literally nothing he could do. There was no die he could roll. There was no might he could expend. He just died. But
I love bottomless pits.
yep. I
So
think there was also one other time that I like sorceress blasted Radagast into one of those pits in one of our games. Do you recall that?
I don't remember that. Um, I do remember, yeah, I do remember some very nasty hurls that I think I was able to pull back in the old edition with my Felbies just throwing guys into
Guys
bottomless
into the pit.
pits.
Yeah. I think there was one time where I like sorceress blasted your Radagast just far enough so that he was like ending up over the pit and was like, it was another Wile E. Coyote moment where he gets like blasted, 90 degrees back and he like looks down and he's standing over the pit and then goes, bye bye, and then falls.
My assumption is that that game was so traumatic that I blocked it out from my memory.
Yep.
So if you want to beat Evan, you either need to play on tables with a lot of pits, or you just need to play dwarves, and then it's an auto.
Right.
It's,
Or even worse,
No, to be
dwarves on
fair,
a table with a lot of pits.
I beat the dwarves that didn't have the siege engines.
Oh, it's just the
you have to take dwarven siege
Ballista.
engines against
there
me.
you go.
Yeah.
Specifically,
Either the Khazad-dûm ballista or the Iron Hills ballista, or I have like 3 stories of Mordor catapults. I think one time a Mordor catapult killed my bard, and killed my Aragorn. And like if you want to beat me, play a siege engine, and you will just psychologically destroy me. And from there, it's basically it.
It's all downhill from there. All right. Well, I think my last story was this past year at Adepticon. My first game of the tournament, I had taken Survivors of Lake Town. It was 850 points, so I effectively get everything. And I played against Azog's Legion again, and it's like Azog, Bolg, and then a bunch of guys. So we're playing the game pretty early on, and he throws a hunter orc into one of its heirlooms of ages past. So he throws a hunter orc into an objective. Right now, his war bands are kind of split. So he throws one of his hunter orcs that's like with Bolg, I think, into an objective and picks it up. And he didn't want that to happen, but I was like, oh, this is great. So it's separated. So Gandalf is like chilling. Gandalf is I'm like, it would be really convenient if I could just compel that little hunter orc into my guys. Like, I'd be able to kill him pretty easily. He's all by himself. This would be great. So I throw Gandalf over, and I'm like, well, Gandalf is going to have to charge 2 hunter orcs to be able to do this. But it's fine, right? Like, it's Gandalf. Like, he's totally fine. So I go over. I'm going to charge them, but like on my way in, I enter your control zone. I'm going to compel this guy and pull him, compel him, pull him over. I'm in the 2 hunter orcs at this point, and I lose the fight. I'm like, oh, okay, well, 5s, and then I have like rerollable fate. Wounds me 3 times with the 2 hunter orcs, and then I did one after the other fail all 3 fate and fail all 3 rerolls for the 3 fate. So that was very, very, very unfortunate. But in the same turn, this was like one of those like plays going everywhere. In the same turn, poor Bolg got linchpinned by Aragorn and Bilbo and blew up. So in this one turn, Gandalf is completely dead. Bolg is completely dead. Hunter Orc is just like in the middle of a field while both my guys and Azog are like desperately trying to reach him. And I think what happened in the end was he had the relic reroll, or the relic roll to see if he goes. And he rolls a 1 and gets transfixed, and then my guys just go like sandwich the guy. And from there, the rest was history. I was able to get the objective and hold on to it, but it was a lot of heartache right at the beginning of the game for both of us.
Wow, that's wild. Okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna go into my last game, or my last memory. It actually has to do with one of the podcast members, Tim Hines, who started this podcast. This was at a Nova game, second to last round. We were playing Reconnoiter. He had, I believe, Gandalf the Grey, Bard, a Lake Town spam, and I had two Fell Beasts and just some Watches of Karna, that old like nasty meta. So we went at it. I got eventually one person off. He got eventually one person off. We knew it was gonna go for a tie, but we're like, let's just roll out all the combat, see what happens, right? Let's finish the game. Um, One Harad warrior against Gandalf, who was his leader. Gandalf rolls like a 2 high or something. I win the fight with the one warrior. He decides to wound him. It was probably on like a poisonous thing or whatever, but he wounds Gandalf. Gandalf with, I think he had 2 might left, 3 fate, fails all 3 and cannot might it up, and I wind up wounding Gandalf and winning the game because of that. And I feel like that was, for the longest time, the closest game ever. I win the game, go on, win the next game, and win Nova. But yeah, thank you, Tim Hines, for your horrible dice rolls, because yeah, it helped a lot, and it was just very unlikely, should not have happened. And still to this day, whenever we get talking about the game, it always pops up, and it's like super unlikely thing to happen. Yeah. So yeah, there goes it. We have all given our, I guess, top 3 moments of unlikely happenings. Some of it sounds like the dice gods were with us. Some of it, the dice gods were not with us. And some of it, the dice gods were void of the game. so, we would like, if you guys have any interesting stories, please share them on either Facebook or comment on the YouTube channel, from this episode, and tell us your crazy stories, and we might actually talk about them on the next episode. But for now, I guess that's all we have. Best of luck with any games you guys play, and roll high when it's needed. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.